1 day away. Tennessee gets back into SEC play, hosting the Kentucky Wildcats, a rivalry game. The battle for the beer barrel, no more, but still a lot of importance for this football game. My keys to the game, how I think things will play out, plus a couple of really awesome guests. All that and more here on a Friday. Locked on Vols.
You are Locked on Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it. This is Locked on Vols. It is your go-to Tennessee Volunteers podcast each and every day. It's a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Eric Kane. So glad to have you guys here with me today. If you're watching on YouTube, please pound that like button. Let's get it to 500 likes. And, of course, subscribe on YouTube and download wherever you get your podcasts. Appreciate you guys for your continued support. All right, we got a fun show today, and today's show is brought to you in part by Underdog Fantasy, UnderdogFantasy.com. Go check it out. Use that promo code Locked On and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. That is Underdog Fantasy. All right, so today, my keys of the game, my preview. I'm going to give you my scout, throw a lot of numbers at you on the Kentucky Wildcats. That's here in segment number 1. Segment 2, we got Boogie Bentley of Talkin' Vols. That's a little Locked On Talkin' Vols segment. And then we're going to finish our show out with Jesse Simonton of On 3. And we're going to get you set for Tennessee and Kentucky. So, the Kentucky Wildcats. All right, Kentucky number 19 in the country. 5-2 with a 2-2 record. It lost 2 straight games to begin the month of October. The first one was with Will Levis at Ole Miss, lost 22-19. The next week, Will Levis was out. A backup quarterback in Cayenne Sharon was in the football game, and Kentucky lost to South Carolina 24-14. But it did rebound. It took down Mississippi State on October the 15th, 27-17, and Kentucky was off last week. Now has 2 weeks to prepare, or has had 2 weeks to prepare for the Volunteers. You have Chris Rodriguez, who arguably one of the best running backs in the SEC and in the country. He was suspended for the first 4 games of the season. He's been back the last 3 games, and you've heard me mention that a million times this week. Kentucky's numbers don't look great offensively, especially the rushing numbers, only 113 yards on average a game. It's a little bit skewed because since he's come back, he's ran for 80 yards, 120 yards, and about 200 yards in his 3 games. So that's something important to remember. But still, Kentucky's offense, it's lost some luster. Lost about 3 starting offensive linemen from a year ago, including one who's playing in the National Football League right now. It's a team that averages 26.4 points per game. Total offense about 373 yards per outing. It's an offense that runs 64 plays per game. It is the slowest tempo in terms of offense in FBS football. 131 teams. Kentucky is the slowest in terms of what it likes to operate offensively. It does average 5.8 yards per play, throws for 260 yards an outing, runs for only 113, though I would advise that's a little skewed because Rodriguez is back and he's been running well. Yards per carry only 3.1. Kentucky's thrown for 15 touchdowns, rushed for 6 touchdowns, average time of possession per ball game, 34 minutes and 24 seconds. It's completing or converting third downs at a 43% clip. And it has turned the football over 12 times so far this season. It has given up 26 sacks offensively. That offensive line, again, not nearly as good as what Kentucky's offensive line has been in the past, and has surrendered 46 plays behind the line of scrimmage for a loss of 235 yards. That is not an exaggeration right there at all. In the red zone, Kentucky scores touchdowns at 57%. That's pretty far off from where Tennessee is scoring touchdowns 82% of the time. Tennessee enters the red zone. So offensively, of course, starts with Will Levis. Will Levis not nearly as good as he was hyped up this offseason, but still a solid quarterback. Missed 1 game, I mentioned that. But in 6 games, Will Levis 1,635 yards passing, 13 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 69% completion for Will Levis. He's also ran twice on the ground for touchdowns. Chris Rodriguez, again, in 3 games, 72 attempts. He's averaging 5.5 yards a carry, 395 yards, and 3 touchdowns, averaging 131 yards per game in his 3 games since returning from suspension. His backup is Kavasier Smoke, 7 games, 56 attempts, 275 yards, and a touchdown. He is averaging 4.9 yards per carry. No Wan'Dale Robinson, no Josh Ali, but you do have Virginia Tech transfer wide receiver Tavion Robinson. 6 games, 25 receptions, 392 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Middle Tennessee native Barian Brown, a true freshman and a return specialist, but also plays wide receiver. He's at 24 receptions, 350 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Dane Key, wide receiver, 20 receptions, 322 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So fairly balanced overall, right? Jesse will talk about this position in a moment. I couldn't agree with him more. You're pretty overall as a unit. The wide receivers, in my opinion, might be better than last year, but Wan'Dale Robinson was in a league of his own, and you don't have Wan'Dale Robinson any longer. The tight ends, Kentucky will employ multiple tight ends out there. 2 tight ends at a time. They'll play fullback. They'll split out wide. Sometimes there'll be 3 tight ends on the field. None of them is overpowering in the receiving game, but if you add up all the receptions from Kentucky's tight end and Keaton Upshaw, Brandon Bakes. Gosh, can't read my own writing. And Jordan Dingle, you do have 24 receptions for, we'll call it about 260 yards and 3 touchdowns. So the tight end position is used. It's just not from one player. But overall, this offense lacks explosion. It's going to be a great challenge for Tennessee's defense. Big time challenge. I think this will be a Jeremy Banks type football game, running all over trying to tackle Chris Rodriguez. Defensively for Kentucky, all right? It surrenders 16.4 points per game, top 10 in scoring defense in the country. Surrenders 295 yards per game, top 15 in overall defense in the country. It averages 58 plays per game, averages giving up 5 yards per play, only 178 yards through the air, only 117 yards on the ground. It's allowing just 3.9 yards per carry. It's allowed only 4 passing touchdowns on the season, 7 rushing touchdowns on the season. 4 passing touchdowns on the season, not bad. And again, you just played Will Rogers, right? You had Jackson Dart earlier this season. That's been the biggest competition. Okay, you had South Carolina. I'm not going to discount that. It's on the field for 25 minutes and 36 seconds per game on average. Third downs, holding opponents to 31% on third downs. It's forced 8 turnovers, 2 on the ground via the fumbles, 6 interceptions through the air, and it has sacked opposing offensive quarterbacks 10 times, and it's corralled 30 plays behind the line of scrimmage, 30 TFLs. So it's a very balanced Kentucky defense. Not one player has more than 1 sack. Not one player has more than 1 interception. It's kind of funny in that regard, but it all starts at the second layer of the defense. You got a couple of good a couple of really good linebackers. DeAndre Square leads the team with 52 tackles. You have linebacker Jacquez Jones, who has a sack, has an interception, has 31 tackles. On the edge, you got J.J. Weaver, Jordan Wright leading the team with 7 TFLs. Up front, former Tennessee target and recruiting Octavius Oxendine, 14 tackles. In the back end, Carrington Valentine, a cornerback, 7 pass breakups on the season so far. Another safety in Tyrell Agian, 22 tackles, one of the leading tacklers from this team a season ago. It's got a star, Alex Afari, 18 tackles, a sack, an interception as well. Very balanced on defense is this. But again, it's not face a quarterback. It is not face an offense and a scheme or pace like it's about to face come tomorrow. I like Tennessee in this football game. I think if Tennessee plays remotely close to the caliber of offense it's been playing so far this season, I think Tennessee should win no problem. Now, I've said it all week. I'll continue to say it. If Tennessee goes in there, has a lot of penalties, Tennessee goes in there and turns the football over, Tennessee goes in there and beats itself, it's going to be a dogfight. But Tennessee should win this football game. And I think by, close to about 2 touchdowns. I think the spread right now is 12.5. I like Tennessee somewhere around 40-28 or somewhere around there, right? 42-28, 40-28, something to that nature. So we will see. It's going to be a big test. It's a rivalry game. Kentucky's a solid football program under Mark Stoops. This is no longer a gimme. But if Tennessee wins this football game, beating another solid football team, and then it sets up for the showdown in Athens, potentially 1 versus 2, but we'll have to see. 1 game at a time. It is Tennessee and it is Kentucky, and that is coming up tomorrow, 7 o'clock Eastern on ESPN. Boogie Bentley of Talkin' Vols, little Locked On Talkin' Vols crossover. That is coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. But I want to remind you guys about Underdog Fantasy. It's the easiest place to spice up the college football season. Super, super easy to sign up, and you can play while you're watching your favorite team play. All right. So for me this year, or for me this weekend, I'm going with VFL. I'm going to go the NFL route. All right. I'm going to go VFL Alvin Kamara. At Underdog Fantasy, it's got rushing and receiving yards. The total set at 102.5 for Alvin Kamara. They're playing the Las Vegas Raiders. Las Vegas, a really good rushing attack in Josh Jacobs. They're going to rely on his running the football. I think that it could be slowing the pace of the game down because he's been so good of late. I'm going to take the under 102.5 with the hook for Alvin Kamara. I recognize that is rushing and receiving, but I'm going to take the under because I think a lot of the emphasis, kind of like Tennessee and Kentucky, is going to be placed on the opposing running back, Josh Jacobs. But again, you got 105 in the hook for Alvin Kamara. You got Devontae Adams in the same game for Vegas. He's at 93.5 receiving yards. You can, pretty much do whatever you want to. You just take the higher, you take the total, say you want to go higher or lower, and then place your bet, right? It's a whole lot of fun to play, and you can play at the college game and, of course, in the NFL. It's available in over 30 states. Just pick between 2 and 5 players across any team, not just your team, and decide if they're going to finish higher or lower, like I kind of just walked through right there. That's just one of my picks that I'm going to do this weekend at Underdog Fantasy. It's the easiest fantasy out there to play games. You can win some cold hard cash in one single game as well. Sign up with the promo code Locked On. That's one word, Locked On, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's put in $100, you're going to get $100 back as well. You go to UnderdogFantasy.com or find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store or the Google Play. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On, one word. Get in on college football today, the pick'em action with Underdog Fantasy. One of my favorite times of the week is when we cross over. Yes, we do a Locked On crossover, typically every Thursday if there's a host in the other market. But on Friday mornings, crossing over with Boogie Bentley of the the Talking Vols Network. You guys jumped in my comments a couple months ago and just begged for it. And so we decided to do it. I join his show every Monday morning typically, and he comes on here every Friday. It's been an awesome time. With that being said, let's bring on Boogie right now. Boogie, I butchered the name as always because what we do the Locked On Talking Vols Friday, and it's a whole lot of fun, man.
It all blends together. Locked On Vols, Locked On Talking Vols Network. Bottom line, the fans ask for it. We're going to give it to them.
Yeah. So what do you think about this week, man? I mean, this is obviously last week was kind of, it's fun because Tennessee's winning and people want, all the content available and just want more Tennessee football. But, we were talking about a UT Martin game, or really we weren't talking about a UT Martin game. We talked about not talking about a UT Martin game, but they go out there, they handle business and everything. But now you get back at SEC play. You got Kentucky. It's a rivalry game, border bowl, beer barrel type game. What's your thoughts on Kentucky in this game?
And as the week has played out, I'm getting more and more excited for this football team because football game. It is a rivalry, and it's been one-sided for Tennessee. You look at the numbers, man, and Vols won 26 straight, right? We sell a T-shirt at Talking Vols called Kentucky's Daddy. But then here lately, it seems like it's kind of shifted and got a little momentum to it. But even still, even with that, Kentucky has beat Tennessee 5 times in my lifetime. I'm not young, Eric. I'm 41 years old, 5 times in my lifetime. We own Kentucky, but still it's an exciting game coming up. Night game, dark mode, all that stuff gets the fans energized. And it is funny, a lot of people trying to sell it. Is it a trap game looking ahead to Georgia? All that type of stuff, man. I just don't see Josh Heupel and this football team not being locked in, ready to go on Saturday. I'm excited, man. It's the next step, right? It seems like every week we get together and we talk and expectations shift and what are we looking at now? And it's just another step, and that sounds like Josh Heupel, another step in the process.
It's the truth, though. It really is. And even with the, tide shifting a little bit, or at least that's what it feels like when you're referencing. The 3 Kentucky wins, that's 3 wins in the last 11 tries. It's still a dominance, one-sided rivalry. But as I like to remind everybody, come Florida game every year. The past has no indication on what's going to happen this week. Now, Tennessee's the much better football team. There's no doubt about it. Tennessee's got the better quarterback. It's got the more efficient offense. Kentucky's solid defensively, but they have not seen a test like they're about to see come Saturday. What do you like about this Kentucky team, or more so, what could Kentucky do that could give Tennessee problems? Maybe a fearful angle there.
Well, I think so many people in this fan base, when you look at it, you look back to last year, right? In 45-42, just an absolute shootout. Will Levis comes out and throws for almost 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. I don't think we're going to see that same football team on Saturday. I don't. And the more I dive into it, the more I look at it on paper, and you're asking me to sell you on something that kind of scares me about Kentucky, the more I dive into it, the more I like Tennessee in the matchup. And you mentioned the defense. Kentucky's defense, 9th in the country in scoring defense, only giving up 16.4 points a game. And when you hear that, it kind of scares you a little bit. It's like, okay, going up against a good defense. Tennessee, number 1 offense in the country. Yards per game, points per game, over 50 points a game. There's no way Tennessee will not score on Kentucky on Saturday. So when you look at scoring defense, look at time of possession, right? That's a big part of it. That's what Kentucky wants to do. They want to slow down this football game. They want to grind it out, eat clock. How are they going to do that, Eric? Are they going to try to run the football? Because that's something else that kind of surprises me is the hype around Kentucky's run game. And I know, I get it. You know, the fact that Rodriguez was out, the first 4 games of the year? I think it was. So when you look again statistically, yards rushing per game, only 113 yards per game on the ground.
Yeah, it's
and
a
then,
good bit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. We can twist numbers both sides, right? Time of possession, Rodriguez being out. Tennessee, it's good on good. If Kentucky's going to try to run the football, I like Tennessee's odds to stop that run. 6th in the country, only giving up 93.5 yards a game on the ground. I like this Tennessee run defense.
Yeah, I mean, I said it going into Alabama, that Tennessee run defense looks good, and some of that, again, is skewed a little bit. I mean, LSU was playing from behind. UT Martin threw every single play of every game and all that. So I understand that there's less rushing attempts, but it's been really solid. Jahmyr Gibbs said going into Alabama, I said, hey, we'll find out how good Tennessee's rush defense is. And for the most part, sure, Gibbs got over 100 yards on the ground, but nobody else got anything. And you take that every single day of the week, right? I mean, I think he finished like 108 yards or whatever. That was a really good effort from Tennessee's front 7. They're going to be tested. Rodriguez, they're going to run. I'm like you. I don't. Now, they did it last year, so I'm not putting it against them if they do it again, but I don't anticipate them trying to play Tennessee's game and trying to win Tennessee's way. I think they're going to try to win their way, and that's going to be running a lot with Chris Rodriguez. Plus, Will Levis is not 100% healthy right now. But what about Rodriguez and that offensive line? Do you think it will test Tennessee? Do you think Tennessee will be able to overcome that stagnant run game? And more so than anything, I just look at that offensive line for Kentucky, and it's not nearly as good as it was last year.
No, and I think, again, if it does end up in a shootout, and it's all going to depend on the first couple of possessions to me. If Tennessee jumps out fast, they get a lead, Kentucky's going to throw their game plan out the window, and they're going to start throwing the football. And that's the way I see this game playing out. And if they do start having to throw the football, again, I think it's advantage Tennessee. I think this Rodney Garner defensive line is going to be able to get after Will Levis. They've shown the lack of ability to protect the quarterback. And if you put pressure on Will Levis, if you force him to make quick decisions, I like him to make mistakes. And again, we're talking about a scenario where Tennessee jumps out to a lead. Now Will Levis has to sling the rock around. If you can take advantage of that, force him into turnovers, we've seen it. We've seen it time and time again with that kid. And, some people out there claiming he's a number 1 draft pick. And you've talked about it. I've heard you talk. He is definitely going to be a guy that plays in the NFL. There's no question about it. He's got the body type. He's got the talent. He's got the ability. But he's also shown that he cracks under pressure. We saw it earlier in the year. Game on the line. Puts the ball on the ground, twice within the last couple of minutes of the game with an opportunity to go win the football game. But, yeah, to answer the question, I like, Tennessee's I like their defensive line and the ability to get after the quarterback, put pressure on Levis, and force him to make mistakes.
This just seems, and I said this on the Rocky Top Roundtable, this just screams a Jeremy Banks football game, does it not? I mean, because they're gonna try to establish the run. Jeremy Banks is playing much better than he has in the last couple of weeks. He played really good against Alabama. I think this is a big-time opportunity for Jeremy Banks in that middle layer of the defense.
Yeah, Jeremy Banks, Aaron Beasley also. I like the way he plays in the run game. I think, we've seen it. This coaching staff, they've been in place for two years now. And we talk about the lack of ability to stop the pass. But on the flip side, they're so dang good against the run. They're so good. And again, you can spin numbers however you want to spin them. And you look at Vols rushing defense being 6th in the country. And you can say, well, yeah, it's because you can't stop the pass. I mean, is that why? I don't know. We can sell any type of narrative that we want to sell. But when I watch Jeremy Banks play, I've always felt like he plays physical and violent and downhill. And sometimes he seems a little lost in the pass game when he drops back into the zone. But if you're running the football, and more particularly if he knows that you're running the football, I like his ability to just sell out, get downhill, and play violent. It's a violent game, and Jeremy Banks plays violently, but he's also played more controlled. That's what I love about Jeremy Banks this year. You know, all the jokes last year of, yeah, he's a good football player, but he's going to cost you a 15-yarder at least once a game. How many times have we seen him hold up, keep from hitting a guy on the sideline?
Knock on wood right there, Boogie.
Yeah. If he gets a 15-yarder, it's on me.
Yeah, you're exactly right, though. I mean, he and that's something Brian Jean-Maurice talked about over the offseason and everything. It's getting him to play chaotic football under control, if that makes sense, because he gets so wound up, but you gotta tame him a little bit because he's got so much athletic ability. And you're right. I mean, I've seen it countless times, him holding up. I even cracked a joke. I forgot what game it was. He was helping somebody out. Like, he hit the quarterback, was like, all right, here, let me help you up right there. Had a face mask penalty, said, oh, that's my fault. I mean, that's maturity and good for him. But he's still playing really, really well. I think he's been playing better as the weeks go on. Something that, we've talked about on the show this week and over on the GQ and VolQuest and all that. Where does Kentucky stack up against you? And Josh Heupel spoke on this on Monday as well. A lot of people say, man, they're fourth. It's not even close. Some people say it's, one of those right up there with Alabama that you got to get every single year. Where does Kentucky kind of stack up with you in terms of a rivalry game?
It's a weird thing because it's the flip. It's the opposite, of the Tennessee-Florida rivalry. We dominated. We rattled off all the numbers. And even, you talked about the 3 wins. 2 of those were by 3 points. Like, Kentucky really only had the big win in 2020 against Jeremy Pruitt. Outside of that, again, 5 times in my lifetime, like, they feel irrelevant. And I ask this to Alabama fans and Florida fans, throughout the years of the streaks. And I'm like, how do you even view Tennessee? Like, do you get nervous when Tennessee comes to town? And I guess some of that has switched a little bit. I do get nervous. It feels like Kentucky always brings their A game against Tennessee, and you can expect some type of dogfight. And maybe some of that's battered ball syndrome of looking at, oh, man, we had this streak and it's over and things are changing and Kentucky's trying to win 10 football games. They're becoming this different type of program. They're still a basketball school. You know what the cure to battered ball syndrome is? Josh Heupel. That's the cure. When do we just say, hey, this is a new era of Tennessee football. I believe in this coach. I talked about it during the Alabama game, telling my wife, I don't have any confidence, but Josh Heupel does, and that's an ace up our sleeve. Battered ball syndrome is dead because Josh Heupel is different. Kentucky's irrelevant. We're Kentucky's daddy.
I'm going to clip that right there. That's going to be out this Saturday morning from this Locked On Talking Vols segment. Hey, this is completely off subject, but kind of on what you were saying there in terms of it being a basketball school. Remember a couple months ago whenever Cal made that comment about saying, hey, we're a basketball school and all that? I mean, this is even before the season started, I think. Yeah. And Mark Stoops got all upset about it and everything. First of all, he was 100% correct, but that whole exchange, what a weird and awful and embarrassing look for the Kentucky athletic department when that whole thing was going down.
Yeah, it makes you appreciate Danny White and the administration at Tennessee and, seeing Tony V come out there. I think he would have been the perfect guy. Of course, you can't argue with Peyton doing the guest picker for game day. Yeah. Tony Vitello would have been perfect, and then Rick Barnes. It just seems like everything's in alignment. Everybody's pulling in the same direction. Seeing Josh Heupel out there at the baseball games, Carnell Tate, wink, wink, being there at the baseball game with him. Rick Barnes in the basketball program being down there to take in games at Lindsey Nelson. It's nice for everybody to be in alignment, but it is a basketball school. So,
final score, what you got for Saturday?
Man, like I said, the more this week plays out, the more I just think this matchup plays into Tennessee's advantage. I think they do score early. I think they score often. I think they jump out front, and Will Levis just cannot get it done. They're going to completely abandon the run game, and I like Tennessee's defensive line to get after him, put pressure on him, force him to make some mistakes. Tennessee, I'm telling you, I called this game a toss-up all offseason. Vols win big. I'm going 42-28. And we're enjoying it. We're not even nervous or anxious on Saturday night.
And again, that's another example about how football teams can change throughout the course of a season. Tennessee's gotten better. Kentucky's gotten a little bit worse in terms of what we thought it would be. Boogie, what's coming up on the show later this, I guess today and this weekend, and then of course you've got the post game show right after the final score goes.
Yeah, Saturday we're going to do the tailgate show, so we'll be live about an hour before kickoff, and that's exactly what it is, the tailgate show. It's a hangout. Crack a beer, come hang out. We let the fans come on. We may talk about, with it being a night game, we may talk about the games that took place throughout the course of the day. It's just like a tailgate. Whatever comes up, comes up. It's always fun to hang out with the listeners, give them a voice. I feel like nobody does that like we do it on the Talking Vols Network. The fans have a voice over there, and then we'll be live immediately after the game. Within a matter of minutes, we'll go live, break down the game after Tennessee takes care of business. Nightmare at Neyland, they're calling it, I think.
Dark mode for sure. Talking Vols Network. Go ahead and subscribe over there on YouTube if you're watching, listening right now, and you haven't checked that out already. Subscribe over there and check out what Boogie and the boys do. They do some awesome work. Boogie, appreciate it, man.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, that is Boogie Bentley of Talking Vols. Does an awesome job every Friday right here on Locked On Vols. Hey, when we come back, going to conclude this Friday show with Jesse Simonton of On3, formerly of VolQuest. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. Tennessee and Kentucky get going later this weekend, and a guy formerly on the VolQuest staff but now writing columns over at On3, Jesse Simonton, is going to hang out with me here today and talk a little Tennessee and Kentucky. Jesse, what's up, man?
What's going on, Canner?
First and foremost, I do want to ask you, I remember you put out a column, maybe it was maybe it was right before the season, I can't remember, but essentially saying Tennessee's for real. So are you shocked to see Tennessee where it is right now at this point in the season?
Not at all. I mean, am I shocked that they're scoring a bajillion points and Hendon Hooker is looking awesome? No. Am I surprised that they have kind of coalesced as well as they have on defense, where there's obviously still some issues in terms of, pass coverage, but they've improved in the run game. They're so much better on third downs. They're still creating enough havoc without kind of getting exposed with so many big plays. So when you put all that together, that's how Tennessee's a top 5 team in the country. So that is a bit surprising, top 5. But I was pretty steadfast the entire offseason, and I thought they were better than Kentucky, this team that we're about to talk about, and that they would be the number 2 team in the SEC East this year. Obviously, they have a chance to be better than that, in 2 weeks, but they have to take care of business on Saturday first.
Kind of a silly question to ask right now because, again, you've got so many other big games coming up, like Kentucky this weekend, like Georgia in 2 weeks. But, I mean, Hendon Hooker, he's right there in the Heisman conversation. Jalen Hyatt, some are saying he should be in the Heisman conversation right now, but Biletnikoff for sure. Did you see those type of seasons from, maybe some of Tennessee's players? But obviously, they're playing that way, and that's a big reason why Tennessee is, where it is right now.
I would be lying if I said I thought Hooker would be even better than 31 touchdowns to 3 interceptions that he did a year ago. And he's been better. And I think that's a credit to him and the work he put in the offseason to kind of continue to build up some of his strengths in the game and become even more comfortable in Heupel's system. I heard the stuff. I read you guys. I read AP, Hubbard, all the talk. And there was a lot of buzz about Hyatt, kind of having this bounce back resurgent season. I think no one saw him becoming this good and kind of literally seamlessly fitting in. And I think in terms of Tennessee's outlook in the future, that's a big recruiting pitch that Heupel's going to be able to sell, that, hey, Brew McCoy's coming here. Jalen Hyatt struggled, and now look at this. And we've done all this without Cedric Tillman. I mean, that's why they may flip Carnell Tate. That's why there's some guys, that they're in on at that receiver position, that Josh Heupel should be able to go to any quarterback and receiver in the country and say, I can do this for you. And I think that's a big selling point.
Again, proof's in the pudding. Look at Jalen Hyatt this year. Look at Cedric Tillman last year. Look at Velus Jones as well. You're seeing some examples of that. Now looking at Kentucky, I've kind of described Kentucky all week long as a team that is not as good offensively as it was a season ago. Really sound defensively team, really good defensive team, but it's still a team that can beat you if you come in and make mistakes. Is that kind of right? Is that kind of how you see Kentucky right now? A little bit of hot and cold offensively, getting better with Rodriguez the last couple of games, but obviously they need a healthy quarterback in Will Levis.
Yeah, I mean, they did have a big performance against Mississippi State. Rodriguez rushed for 200 yards. They've had the bye week to kind of put together a game plan, strictly around this Tennessee game. I think they've kind of held this thing together with duct tape and chicken wire. They've been beat up really since the opening week of the season. I wrote another column in the preseason skeptical about this whole big blue wall and them just running it back. And sure enough, Kentucky's offensive line has not been the strength that it was in previous years. They allow a pressure rate at the highest pressure rate in the SEC, among the worst in the country. Outside of that Mississippi State game, they really haven't run the ball very well, which is why they lost to South Carolina. Will Levis has been hot and cold, like you said. I'll be very curious to see how Kentucky approaches this game, because their OC comes out and says we can't score 50 points. That's not really the style we play. Obviously, Tennessee's averaging 50 points, but do you try to shorten the game and go for a bunch of fourth downs? Maybe not in the exact way that Brian Kelly kind of approached playing Tennessee a couple weeks ago, but do you take some risks and say, hey, we don't have 3 downs to get this first down here. We got 4. And that could put Tennessee in some pressure situations, because I do think Dane Key is a heck of a receiver outside. Barryon Brown. I mean, those are guys that can stress Tennessee's corners, which is, I think, the weak link, that secondary of Tennessee's entire defense.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Plus, you got a couple of guys injured at that position as well. So who will you have back this week? Time will tell come Saturday. Kind of on that note, last year, Kentucky just kind of said, all right, game plan, I'm going to throw it out the window, because Tennessee came out and scored twice on, I want to say, 2 plays on screen passes at the perimeter. And they said, all right, we got to throw it. We got to ditch our game plan. We try to keep up with Tennessee. So you're saying you don't foresee that happening again this year. And I didn't see it happening last year, to be honest with you, because that's just not how they go. They've got Rodriguez, who's, coming back into form a little bit. They don't have Wan'Dale Robinson. They don't have Josh Ali on the outside, though you do have Brown, you do have Dane, you have some guys that are capable playmakers. I just don't see a scenario kind of like what you're just saying, where they scrap the entire game plan and they have Will Levis throw it 30 times in the first half like last year. I don't see that happening 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't either. And I actually do. I think Kentucky's receivers this year are better than the guys they lost. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson, no, but Tavion Robinson's been solid since he got hurt. Yeah. But I like those two kids that they have. They have not put the ball in Will Levis's hands to go win them a game yet this season. He's gotten a lot of buzz, and a lot of jokes have been written about, him being the top 5 quarterback prospect, especially compared to what Hendon Hooker has kind of, produced actually on the field. But if that is the path, maybe they do give him the ball 30 times, but that is not the approach I see either. I mean, it really comes down to, this is a worse Kentucky team than last season, and in maybe even the last couple seasons. And Jeremy Pruitt found ways to beat Kentucky. I as long as Tennessee, I think, comes in focused, I have a hard time seeing them not win this football game on Saturday.
Look at Kentucky's defense. It's a very balanced defense. I've said it all week. 10 sacks, all from different players. 6 interceptions, all from different players. Strength is in the second layer at the linebacker position, of course, with DeAndre Square, Jacquez Jones. They've got J.J. Weaver and Jordan Wright off the edges a little bit. What do you like about this Kentucky defense? It's pretty solid. I mean, it's top 10 in scoring and top 15 overall.
Yeah, I mean, I bet Jacquez Jones is a guy that AP and I actually covered as recruits many years ago, and he, started at Ole Miss, transferred up. I like the linebacking core. The defense is not exactly littered with a bunch of special players like Kentucky has had kind of in the past. Brad White, their coordinator, just does a really good job putting his guys in the best position to play. I mean, this is a physical unit. That's probably the one word I think you really can say about this defense. They truly are physical. They're not an exceptional pass rushing defense. They're pretty good against the run. But they will pound you and they will make you feel it. And I do think, again, if you're looking for a potential path to some sort of, upset or a scare for that Tennessee may be in store for, that could be it. I mean, this is the reason they went into Gainesville, and Florida is not a great team, but the reason they went into Gainesville is that they laid it on Anthony Richardson. They made him feel them. And that is something that, if you get a couple early hits on Hendon Hooker, maybe, he sails a pass or two and suddenly a turnover, he kind of flipped the script in a game.
All right, Jesse. So obviously Tennessee and Kentucky this week, the big one, another big one. Can't look ahead if you are, well, we can, but if you're that football team, can't.
Yeah,
look
we
ahead.
can.
Yeah.
We don't have to play, so it doesn't matter for us.
Yeah, Tennessee and Georgia coming up in 2 weeks. But anything else you're looking for this weekend around the SEC? Ole Miss at Texas A&M, that can be a bludgeoning, in my opinion, with Ole Miss potentially getting back on the winning ways. I don't think Florida and Georgia is going to be much of a football game. Anything else from the SEC this weekend?
Yeah, I'm curious. I think that A&M Ole Miss game is going to be interesting because, does Ole Miss enough momentum to get the mat after getting embarrassed at home? That schedule was so soft to start the season, and you were able to get some Charmin wins, and then you face a real, team in LSU, and yet LSU isn't like the best team in the SEC West, but they got a lot of good players, and Brian Kelly's a good coach, and so LSU Lane, he got exposed a little bit. I think he was kind of feeling himself after his latest Auburn audition. So can they get off the mat? And conversely, I mean, what's going on with Jimbo? I've written about it plenty, but man, A&M's in a rough spot, and they're in real danger of they signed that #1 recruiting class. They're in real danger of some of those kids, maybe looking elsewhere if they don't figure out some things offensively, whether that's deciding on a quarterback, but how you get Evan Stewart the football, how do you just simplify the offense? It doesn't have to be so complicated and perfect on every play. Josh Heupel, Tennessee, to bring us back full circle, he's a proven example of this. Their scheme is not, the most complex, the most difficult to understand. It is literally find your playmakers in space, spread guys out, find the one-on-one matchups, and expose it to death. And that's what they did to Alabama, and that's probably what they're going to do on Saturday to Kentucky.
Jesse, anything big coming up this weekend that you're riding over at On 3?
Covering a lot of now I'm doing, since I'm not doing just SEC, doing all the national stuff. I mean, I have a column that came out on Mike Gundy and kind of what he's done at Oklahoma State today. Latest carousel rumblings, man, the churn and burn is happening with these coaching searches. So kind of what's going on at Auburn and kind of some behind the scenes stuff there. Looking at Nebraska again. Jim Leonard, Wisconsin, big win for him on Saturday to kind of get a big blowout. I think he continues to kind of inch closer to getting that job, losing that interim tag.
Jesse Simonton of On 3. Jesse, thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
Great stuff there from Jesse Simonton of On 3, and just another, just some more thoughts getting you set for Tennessee and Kentucky. Hey, that's going to do it for us here on Locked On Vols, your Friday edition. Guys, can't wait. It's going to be a big-time football game. I know you're excited, and of course, you follow me at _Kaner and at Locked On Vols. Hey, follow the Locked On Vols. Follow that on Twitter. Let's get it to 2,000 by Saturday, by kickoff, and of course, we'll have updates throughout the game at both of those Twitter handles as well. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen. Now for your second listen, okay? Check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and it's the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you find your podcast. That's Locked On Sports Today. Make that your second listen. All right. Guys, going to be fun. Rivalry game coming up tomorrow, Tennessee and Kentucky. We'll see what happens, but no matter what, we'll be back here Monday morning and all throughout the weekend talking with you guys, hanging out with you guys right here on the Locked On Vols YouTube channel, on Twitter, and, of course, wherever you listen to your podcast. Stay safe if you're going to the game. Enjoy it, and have a great weekend, everybody.